Welcome to Playing Card Stock and Finish's premiere full-length video. Our first video is a deck review. Deck reviews will not be the only type of videos I do, but more on that later. By the way, when I was taking my Skillshare class on how to make a YouTube channel last month, I was told that my first 100 videos were just going to suck and that I shouldn't have any expectations beyond that. So neither should you. The deck I'm going to be reviewing today on Stock and Finish is the Farid Carbon deck. It came out in 2017, but it has never before been reviewed on YouTube, and that is one of the reasons I picked it for our very first video. It turns out that this is an incredibly rare deck for more than one reason, but we'll circle back to that after I've shown you the cards. Now, before we get into the tuck case and the cards, I just wanted to say who this deck was made for. He is a German-born Persian illusionist that goes by the stage name Farid. From what I can tell, he is basically, for lack of a better term, Germany's David Blaine. He does street magic in the David Blaine tradition, and in media he's often seen with or performing for various celebrities, which is also what reminded me of David Blaine. So that's who had this deck made. Okay, we'll start with the visual aspects of the deck, beginning with the tuck. Overall, it's a fairly minimalist design. It is a gloss white tuck with hot stamped gold foiling and line work surrounding the name Farid on the front. I only have three little criticisms about this deck. The first of which is that the sides of the tuck are blank. This may not bother anybody else, but just because of the way I store my decks, this is a pet peeve of mine because I store mine in brick boxes, so when the side of the tuck is blank, I can't tell what the deck is unless I physically remove it from the brick box. And I have the windowed brick boxes, so the whole point is being able to look and see what the deck is without having to remove it. So that's just one of my three little criticisms about this deck, but it's still one of my favorite decks in my entire collection, and the reasons will become clear as we go along. On the bottom, there is a little bit of text, again in the hot stamped gold foiling. In tiny font, it says www.farid.tv, which is his website, and then we have Carbon Edition in the hot stamped gold foil. The top of the tuck is also blank. We do have a deck seal, although it is not a numbered seal. The deck seal is a mirror representation of the back design of the cards and of the back design of the tuck itself. And this is the most attractive part of the deck, in my opinion, and it's what caught my eye and drew me to this deck initially. I've always been a fan of the carbon fiber weave, and juxtaposing that black carbon fiber weave pattern with the hot stamped gold foiling just really gives it a stunning, modern yet elegant look. And then the inside of the tuck is completely coated in that gold foiling, and it is one of the shiniest gold foils that I have seen on any deck. Some of you may remember the Madison Kings deck. I don't know if you recall, but the prototype of that deck looked like this. It was extremely shiny, and ultimately they went with a more matte finish on the tuck, and I believe it's because this material scratches very easily, and so they didn't want a really scratch-prone material on the outside of the Madison King's deck tuck. But it's perfectly fine on the inside because the inside doesn't take a lot of abuse. The inner tuck flaps are blank. So as I said, overall it's a very minimalist design. Oh, almost forgot. The flap has a quote, "Those who don't believe in magic will never find it." And then his symbol, again, is above that. And unfortunately, the URL here with a password, since the deck is 6 years old, it's no longer functioning. But that probably led you to a web page that would explain maybe what you could do with some of the features that are on the cards that I haven't shown you yet. We'll get to that here right now. On to the cards. This is the back design of the deck, which is my favorite aspect of the entire deck. The back design is absolutely incredible in my opinion. It's the same design that you saw on the back of the tuck. It has the carbon weave pattern and the hot stamped gold foiling. I believe earlier I stated that I had only three little gripes about this deck. The second of which is that since this deck was made in 2017, this was relatively early on in terms of the technology using hot stamped foiling, and back then they had a real difficult time they had a difficult time preventing the hot stamping from causing embossing on the other side. I don't know how well this will show on camera, but the hot stamped foiling does leave a little bit of embossing. In the right light, at the right angle, you can see the embossing coming through on the other side, but it's minor. It's minor. It's not a deal breaker for me at all. The spot cards are all standard. They're exactly what, and there's only one power ace, the ace of spades. So all of the spot cards are just standard. Nothing special about any of the other aces. However, the ace of spades, we have a giant pip, spade pip in the middle with the carbon weave pattern. And a little ad copy saying Farid Carbon Edition playing cards. And I wasn't able to find out what the 23 represented. Again, it's due to the age of the deck and the rarity of the deck, which we'll also get to after I go over the cards. This is an incredibly rare deck, which is another reason that draws me to it, and another reason that I chose it for the first deck review on our channel. The red jacks and red queens in the courts are also standard, but the rest of the courts are highly modified. I'm assuming because Farid is Persian, he chose to give the courts a Middle Eastern looking complexion. But here are the rest of the courts. Now, I'm not sure who the King of Diamonds is supposed to represent, but other than the card that represents Farid himself, it is the only court, the only modified court, I should say, that does not have that Middle Eastern complexion. And I'm not exactly sure what he's supposed to be holding, but I'm going to feel silly saying this, but it appears that he's holding a steering wheel and that he's holding a steering wheel, and in the other corner appear to be rims from an automobile. I might be wrong. If you have any better ideas of as to what that might be, please feel free to leave it in the comments. I wish I knew who the King of Diamonds is supposed to represent. Now I have a guess. I'm not sure, but I think the Queen of Clubs is supposed to represent Farid's significant other. I don't know that for a fact. It's just a guess because it is the only queen that has a card reveal. She's holding one card showing the back design of the deck, along with a 6 of Hearts reveal. And the King of Hearts is Farid himself. And again, I'm going to feel silly saying this, but I believe he is holding a nail gun to his own head. I don't know if that's something that he usually incorporates into his routines. Probably is, but that's just a guess. Very interesting and quirky quartz. Now this deck does not have jokers, as many decks from the Taiwan playing card company don't. They usually only have 54 cards, or in very rare cases 55. Instead of jokers, it comes with 2 blank face cards. One is a standard blank face card, and the other one is a blank face card with an indicator, which is just a small white dot to differentiate the 2 blank face cards for some reason. Again, since the website isn't working, I can't tell you what that is for exactly, other than it's for some effect that I'm not privy to. Okay, that covers the cards, and that is where most deck review channels would stop. But we are card, stock, and finish. So now I'm going to get into my favorite aspect of playing cards and talk about the tactile attributes of the deck, the stock and finish, and what makes this deck so incredibly rare. I know this is already going to be too long.
That's what she said!
I meant the video, but to keep time down as much as my ego will allow, I'll soon have a separate video just on stocks and finishes. Over 3 years of my research, info you will not find anywhere else on YouTube, and it's going to be one of the channel's most important videos. When it comes out, I'll post a card at the end of this video to link to it. But in case there are non-collectors or new collectors watching, here are 2 quick definitions. Card stock is the material, usually paper, that cards are printed on. The finish is the protective coating of chemicals in solution that is applied to the card stock. Okay, moving on. A channel I watched early on in my own collecting journey was Magic Orthodoxy. He used to do a lot of deck reviews, and I appreciate his channel for introducing me to many of my now favorite decks. However, I've since stopped watching for 2 reasons. One, he stopped doing deck reviews often. He switched to more Magic content, and I'm strictly a deck collector. But the bigger reason is because he said something like this in every USPCC deck review he posted.
These cards are printed from the United States Playing Card Company, which means what, kids? They feel awesome. That's right. I'm so glad Adam went with bicycle. Huge props to all you designers who still use the United States Playing Card Company. They simply are the best on the planet.
Nothing could be further from the truth. I'm going to have another video that lays out the evidence, my reasons why USPCC is inferior to both Cartamundi and the Taiwan Playing Card Company, except for decks printed in mainland China. Again, when that video comes out, I'll have a card to it at the end of this video. In fact, unless I really like a design, if somebody hands me a USPCC deck that was printed after 2009, I usually have this reaction.
Hey, let me see. The fuck? Yay!
The one good thing I took from Magic Orthodoxy's channel was measuring every deck I opened with a micrometer. So I have data, cold hard data on every deck. This deck measures 0.298 millimeters per card. I measure 10 cards and divide by 10 because one card is too thin to get accurate readings on. This is imperceptibly thicker than USPCC's casino stock, also known as B stock. But similar thicknesses do not mean they feel the same. They feel nothing alike, thankfully. Decks made by the Taiwan Playing Card Company when printed in their Taiwan facility are much, much better. Their stock feels much more refined. It's more durable than a USPCC deck by a factor of 2 or 3, meaning it'll last that much longer. And you can feel the quality difference if you're someone who handles decks a lot. Even though it's more durable, it still feels elegant and expensive, even though it costs about the same as a USPCC deck. The stock is slightly thinner than Cartamundi's B9 True Linen, but it is not nearly as soft. It feels like a genuine casino stock, which is what this stock is called. Another huge problem that plagues USPCC decks is registration errors. For new people, that means misalignments in printing. I use a digital caliper to check registration, and as usual, this TWPCC deck has flawless registration on all 4 sides on every card I checked. In contrast, more than 10% of my USPCC decks have registration errors, some of them egregious errors, and you'll see more of that in the video that I mentioned on the reasons that USPCC is inferior to both Cartamundi and the Taiwan Playing Card Company. The edges of any deck printed by the Taiwan Playing Card Company are absolutely light years above anything from USPCC. They use a proprietary cutting method that makes farrowing equally effortless in either direction, unlike USPCC decks that only farrow easily in one direction, depending on whether they're cut traditionally or have a modern cut. And I did a YouTube short on the difference between traditional cut and modern cut. You can check that out if you feel like it. Now, as for the finish that's used on this deck is TWPCC's Magic Finish. Earlier I mentioned there were 3 things that I had gripes about regarding this deck. This is the biggest one. However, even to me, this is not a big deal. This is only going to be a big deal for magicians and people that do sleights and flourishes. Magic Finish is not my favorite finish from TWPCC. They may have a new one that has not been named yet, but other than that, there are 3 finishes, which, by the way, is 2 more than either Cartamundi or USPCC offer. The oldest 2 are Royal Finish and Magic Finish. The Magic Finish that was used for this deck, it's good, but it's not great. The one thing that USPCC does have going for them is that they do make the world's best finish. USPCC decks fan better than any other deck, although Cartamundi is catching up fast, and they are very, very close now in fanning as well as USPCC decks. Magic Finish came out before TWPCC had gotten really good at finishes, but it's far from bad. It's just not as good as their legendary finish. I'm terrible at fans, but someone who's good at them would have no trouble with Magic Finish. And that about covers everything regarding the qualities of the stock and finish of this deck. Now I want to talk a little bit about what makes this deck so rare, and then we'll wrap the video up. From late 2016, early 2017 until late 2019, early 2020, the Taiwan Playing Card Company had 5 card stocks to offer and 3 finishes. The casino stock on which this deck was printed on was only used, to the best that I can tell, on a total of 3 decks. I don't know of any other card stock ever used by any manufacturer that was used on as few as 3 decks. That makes it incredibly rare. The finishes that were used on these 3 decks, 2 of the decks printed on casino stock used legendary finish, and this deck is the only one of the 3 printed on casino stock to use magic finish. That makes this stock and finish combination the rarest in the entire playing card world. I don't know of any other deck of playing cards that has a completely unique combination of stock and finish. When I started collecting, this deck had already been sold out for probably 3 years, maybe more than that. So this is what I saw when I went to Hanson Chien's website, sold out. And the last fact about rareness, there is a website that most deck collectors use called Portfolio 52. It has almost 31,000 registered users. And on that database, the only person who has the Farid Carbon deck on that database is myself. Those rarity facts combined are why this is one of my most valued decks. If you made it this far, thanks for tolerating the long video. I hope you've enjoyed our first deck review on playing card stock and finish. We'll be back in about a week with another deck that's never before been reviewed on YouTube. I hope you'll consider subscribing, hitting the like button, and leaving a comment. Those things really help, especially new channels. Well, that's it for now. Really appreciate you being here, and we'll see you next week on Playing Cards Stock and Finish.